Hello and welcome to another edition of PAC Check-ins. I'm your host, Sean Davido, and today I'm joined by Yakima City Manager, Mr. Bob Harrison. Thank you for joining me today, Mr. Harrison.
Good morning, Sean. Nice to see you.
Now, we're already almost into March. The year is already flying by, as time tends to do, and 2021 is wrapped up. How does 2022 look? Where's the city? What direction is the city going? Share a little bit about what the city's working on.
Yeah, well, I think the best thing is we're kind of seeing the horizon here for the lifting of a lot of the regulations that the state has imposed to deal with the pandemic. And I think that lifting will help improve our business activity, as well as just seeing more people traveling to Yakima again, as the tourism industry is really important to us. But I think we got several items related to that we were able to accomplish in 2021 to set us up for success in 2022 as the pandemic does start to wind down. One was we completed the convention center expansion last year. That was over a 25% expansion of space. And, while a lot of the travel industry, especially airlines and stuff, have started to return, I think people are now thinking about returning to conferences, in-person meetings, and that will help to start to improve the bookings at the convention center. And we're, I think, set up in a good place to be very competitive in the state. We still need some more hotels. I think we're seeing more hotels on the horizon in the downtown and over by Union Square. And we still are looking at potential opportunities for development near the convention center. But the tourism industry, I think, is going to come back pretty strong, and that'll be helpful to our economy. The other project that the city had invested in a few years ago was the Ymca, and that was pretty significantly hit by the pandemic. And as those rules and regulations have started to loosen, I think we've really seen the community embrace that facility, and membership is up and usage is up, and it's a true asset for the community that we're seeing more and more.
Yes, it is.
Right. And Sozo, again, that was another project that had started a few years ago, affected by the pandemic. I think we're continuing to see the Sozo group make those investments and improvements in the facility and increase in usage by the community. So very positive stories, I think, in those three areas of previous projects that have now set us up for success, I think, as we're going forward.
And people are getting out and using Sozo and the Ymca. I drive by there on a regular basis. The parking lot is fuller. I mean, it's nice that people are getting back out. My stepson goes swimming at the Y, and that's one of the greatest things, is that asset. And I'm good friends with Mr. Romero from the Ymca, and it's such a pleasure to be able to work with him and just some of the things that they bring to this community. And not just that facility, they bring some wonderful programs and stuff to our area also.
Right. Yes, at both facilities. And that building is an asset that many communities across the country would be very jealous of us having. It's a very impressive facility, and it's going to be great as we continue to see that growth and usage over there.
Now let's talk a little bit about, you want to talk about work to enhance the airport and some of the things going on at the airport, and a possible new terminal and some work going on there, and some funding.
Yeah, so the city has been planning for a new terminal, and the plan is sometime in 2027 to 2028 that we've started to work into the FAA budget for improvements and investment in that facility. The city did receive a $5 million earmark in the transportation budget last year from the federal government for that facility. And we're continuing to get some grant funds that are coming in for that building as well. So we just finished the environmental work for that project. And so we're set up pretty well as grant funds come from the recent infrastructure project that the federal government approved. I mean, we're at that stage where we need to be competitive for a lot of those grants. So we're excited about that. And last year we hired a grant writer on staff, first time the city's done that. And he's now got at least about 6-7 months of experience working for the city and getting to know our operations. And so as these grants now are starting to roll out and be released for applications, I think we're, from a staff perspective, very well set up to be competitively writing those programs.
And a lot of those grants are competitive, and we're not just competing. It's not just money given to Yakima. It is every other community in our state or in the country going for those dollars, right?
Absolutely, yes, they're very competitive, and the best we can do is put our best foot forward and tell our story, and try to be as competitive as we can in our applications, and hopefully we'll be successful. And we need to continue to build those relationships with our federal elected officials also, as they can be really instrumental in helping the community move forward and be successful in some of those grants.
Absolutely. Another big project that's on the horizon that has been in the works that is very visible to people that drive the I-82 corridor is the Millsight project and the east-west corridor. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know there's work going on. Where's the city at with that project?
Yeah, I get asked a lot about the Millsight and where that project is, and when you look at that, it's a mega project in terms of the amount of investment that's needed, the private partnerships, all the bureaucracies like the Department of Ecology that are involved in helping to oversee that cleanup effort. So, and so the good news is we're getting close to the end, right? I think if all the pieces kind of fall into place by 2027, the interstate will be completed, the exits will be installed off the interstate onto the new east-west corridor. So the city did quite a bit last year, about a $15 million investment in removing the municipal waste that was on that site in the areas where the road bed's going to be for the new east-west corridor. And we're preparing for that next phase, which is going to be the actual paving of those streets, the second phase of the environmental cleanup that needs to take place there, some of the sewer investments that have to be made. So I think we're setting up pretty well. The county will be following us shortly thereafter in 2023. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the state will be, WashDOT's supposed to come back in 2025, 26. So, and the good news, I think, is the private investors who own that property are doing some of the environmental work that needs to get done in that site. So that when some of that infrastructure is done, we'll actually start to see some investment occurring.
Yeah, you can see people moving dirt. They're definitely moving dirt out there. And Yakima, it sounds like Yakima will change. The entrances to Yakima will change quite a bit by 2027, 2030, actually. Yakima will look quite different to people driving through our community and coming to our airport. So
I agree, absolutely. I mean, transportation is and infrastructure is a key component for success for any city, and it's a place that the business community and our residents can help build off of. And so, yeah, I think it's very good to see these larger projects kind of go forward, and you can see the end in sight.
And some progress being done there. So let's talk, where's the money? Everybody always wants to know from the city manager, how's the city doing financially as we begin 2022? Where are we at? Give us a status on budget or whatever you can tell us about city finances.
Well, I think the city ran into a couple of things. One, obviously, based on some of the previous decisions that had been made, the city had, gotten into some financial challenges and needed to take some steps forward. And I got a very clear direction from the city council that we needed to, when I joined the city in 2020, needed to make strides to make sure that the municipal corporation that is Yakima is in a good financial place, that we can operate it like a business with appropriate plans, and then make those investments going forward. It's been challenging, but I think we're making good strides. It was just in 2019 that the city had reserves of less than 10% in the general fund. By the beginning of this year, we're at 20% for general reserves, with a goal of getting up to 25%. And if that helps us, we'll be much more resilient in terms of having some ability to do things if there's an emergency or some other future planning that needs. We've also set up reserves for those funds that, like our insurance funds, health insurance fund, our property and liability funds, to make sure that they're adequately funded, so that if we do run into some challenges in those areas, we, claims or whatever, we've got the money there to take care of. And the other piece of this is like planning ahead. So one of the big goals that we had this last year was buying fire equipment and police vehicles that had been bought a long time ago in the past, but a financial plan wasn't put in place to replace those vehicles. And so we were very fortunate that the ARPA Act was adopted. And so the city had lost, under their calculations, about $11 million in revenue from the pandemic. And so we were able to restore those funds in the city coffers. And that, really helped us, because we were able to pay cash for 57 new police vehicles and 3 fire engines. And now we set up the reserves. Every year we'll pay for the depreciation of those vehicles and that rolling stock. And when they need to be replaced, police vehicles in 7 years or fire vehicles in 17 years, the cash will be there to actually purchase that. So I think we're making strong strides to ensure the financial resiliency and sustainability of the city.
Because police cars and fire trucks will get used, they will wear out, and we have to have a plan to move forward to replace those things. It sounds like we have a solid plan in place and a good reserve. And there was concerns over the last several years in the city just of reserves and where the reserves sit. So it sounds like we're doing a good job to get the city back to, and I don't want to ever say we were always in a pretty good financial situation. We've been managed fairly well. Mr. Zace did a good job. He was a financial wizard. And so I don't want to say we were in dire straits, but there were some challenges definitely. And it sounds like we're back to a more sustainable and renewable system under you. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, Mr. Zace was a great city manager
yes.
for many, many years. He also left in 2010.
Yes.
So it was a heck of a decade, I think. But,
and we've had several challenges since then. So
yes, we have. So, but I think this council's really focused on the financial sustainability of the city. They understand. The taxpayers voted on a passage back in 2020. It didn't do well. And so I think the message clearly was, all right, we got to work with what we have. We also need to start to make better economic use of our assets that we have in the city, whether that's property that we own, or making those investments that will produce more tax revenue into the future, or taking funds that may come in like ARPA and meeting obligations that we know are going to be in place. Like on the Millsight, we're using about $6 million of that fund to pay for some of the sewer work on that site. And so that, before ARPA, that would have been borrowed money. Now we're able to cash and start to really build, a better and brighter future. So it's been good, and we'll continue to do the work that we've done over the next several years.
Now, ARPA is the federal funding from the COVID pandemic. Is there other funding? What other uses are being utilized by the city for some of that funding?
Yeah, so there's several things that, as we sat down and developed recommendations and initiatives on how to use the money, we ended up first looking at, okay, what are the city's anticipated obligations in the near future that would probably take debt to pay for, that we would be able to use some of this cash to pay for. And we did talk about the police and fire vehicles, for example, and the planned sewer investments that are going to be taking place. But we also needed to look at tackling some of the major issues we have as a community. And one of those, for example, is domestic violence. And so we've been talking to the YWCA about exploring expansion of their space to help families and children that may experience domestic violence to have a safe place to go and get back on their feet. And so the city's looking at investing a couple $1 million into that facility as they start to move forward. There's several projects that are like that. Affordable housing, we're looking at spending about $1.5 million for opportunities there to entice more affordable housing projects, and homelessness as well. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about public safety, which is always important, but we're looking forward to a new program that will be developed around homelessness and kind of changing our homelessness response.
Absolutely. And since you brought it up, let's talk about public safety. The police chief recently put out a letter to the community regarding crime and safety in our community. Can you talk a little bit about what the city of Yakima is doing, what the Yakima Police Department, and what we're doing to work on public safety and make people safe and make people feel safe?
Right. Yes. There are a couple of things I think on public safety. One is public perception, and then the other piece of that is the facts. And public perception may not always be in alignment with the facts of where the data is. And I think I was really pleased that the police chief put out that letter, kind of a report to the community on how we're doing on crime. And he's done a very good job of making progressive improvements into the police department and where their focus is. And we are dealing with violent crime. It's a very significant issue in the community. We're still focused on those other pieces. Robberies, our detectives division is well staffed and does an excellent job in trying to solve crime. But I think one of the areas that is the most significant in terms of violence in the community is domestic violence. And we talked a little bit about that a minute ago. But the police department has put together a coalition of all the various bureaucracies and organizations in the community that have some response or connection to domestic violence. And it's been great over the last 6 months. We're making real strides in trying to enhance and improve the safety of our residents as it relates to that domestic violence and hold people accountable when they commit those crimes. And frankly, when you look at the significant crime like murders, we had 11 of them in 2021. A lot of those, over half of those, were related to domestic violence. They weren't, gang shootings. Although gang shootings definitely get all the press, it is that domestic violence that we need to tackle, and that's where you'll see the long-term benefit, I think, of the city's efforts, because there's these items are called ACEs, so adverse childhood experiences, and the more adverse childhood experiences that people have, the more likely they're going to be involved in crime or homelessness or other activities down the road that are going to need public support and some public involvement or engagement. And so if we can do some intervention now with children, at that younger age level to help provide a more stable and safe environment, and coordinating with the school district, with state agencies around corrections, coordinating with the prosecutor's office, that we can make a real difference in changing the culture of violence that exists in people's homes. And that's the thing that's most concerning. So we are going to tackle that at multiple fronts. And I think as we've seen as well, we are seeing decreases in crime in many areas. So I think there's a good story that could be told there as we start to look at the data. Are we where we want to be? No, we still got progress to make. But I think the trend line is going in the right direction.
Yes, and domestic violence is, like you say, such a huge area, and some of those other systemic instances like drug abuse and overdose and all of those things, they play a part. And if you can get help to the people that are struggling early, and a lot of it stems around what's going on in their homes. And so I know I've worked a little bit with some of the police officers and some of the mental health agencies just on those ACEs and identifying that at an early enough age to be able to help those people. And that's where we've got to start in our community. So
yes, I think it's not only impressive that we're starting to see results of the agencies work together, but we're starting to see results, in the field, right? And
yeah,
that's the big difference is, changing the impact of this violent crime on people's lives.
And changing the culture of our community. So, and like we've said many times in talking to the police officers, domestic violence, the one thing that you can do to help is report it. If you know it's happening, please report it. That's a message that we always do try to get out. And I know the police department and other agencies are very definite about getting that message out. So,
and it's endemic throughout the community, right? It's not one side of the community or another side of the community. I mean, it is a challenge throughout. And so, it's been something I think we're laser focused on trying to make real improvements.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the Clean City program. It was implemented a while back. Where are we now? What does that program look like now? How are we cleaning up our community and our streets and alleyways?
Yeah, well, thanks, Sean. I think that's been something that we implemented. Well, the council adopted as part of the budget in 2021, and we're in the process of implementing it now. Previously, we had one staff member assigned on actually a full-time equivalency, so it wasn't even one full-time individual that would go out and pick up trash and garbage throughout the city, and we might be able to hit that route early, at 6:30 or 7, and do those cleanups of those areas that we have some challenges in, and by 10 o'clock it looks like the city had never been there. So it just the model, while it was picking up a lot of trash, just wasn't working in terms of the perception and how visually it was impacting the city. So one of the enhancements we've made to the program is we added another staff person. We've got a dedicated team now that can go out, and we've got a truck that is mobile and will be able to visit sites multiple times a day to make sure that we're getting that cleanup done. And that's important. We're partnering with our nonprofit partners as well to continue to do that street outreach to our homeless population, and help them get into the services that they need to start to move their lives forward. We also have gone through and started to look at those houses within the community that are what we would call disruptors. So, that's where people, their home is where people live. They want to feel safe, both in their home and in their neighborhood. And, sometimes one house can have a tremendous impact on the feeling of safety within that neighborhood. And so we did a couple things. Last February, we adopted the International Property Maintenance Code, which will give us a lot more tools to be able to start to do code enforcement. We're adding an attorney to the legal office that will now be available to prosecute those property owners that haven't been very responsive in bringing those properties up to standards. And then reorganized a portion of our inspection division and code enforcement so that we know we've got dedicated personnel to focus on some of these issues. And so our goal, we started out with 50. Started out with 50 properties a year. That is our goal, to start to make real change and improvement in holding people accountable for maintaining their property within the city. And so our hope is that will start to be a disruptor in terms of the normal course of business that we see with some of these properties, and we can make them very productive, contributing properties to the overall neighborhood.
Because sometimes it's almost like one property, like you said, can hold the whole neighborhood hostage, and sometimes even more. I mean, and it's dealing with those properties, and it's not. I know the city doesn't want to be heavy-handed, but it's that cooperation and trying to work with those people to improve their properties and be part of a successful community.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's why, as a matter of fact, on some of these properties, we do intend to be heavy-handed because they are significant disruptors. They are
right.
They're locuses of crime. They
right.
are they cause, some of these properties have burned 3 times, and our fire department is very effective at putting the fire out. But now you're left with a very dilapidated building that
right.
brings other attractive nuisances. And so we plan on working cooperatively as much as we can with notifying those property owners about those challenges, but we also
want to get the message across.
We want to see real change. We need to start to raise our expectations in the community of what those properties should look like. And in the 25 years I've been in this business in city management, I've always seen when the city makes a public improvement on the street, whether it's a paving or an overlay or new sidewalks, or if you do see a disruptive private property that maybe gets bought or there's improvements that are made to it, all of a sudden everyone else who lives on that street feels better and safer about making an investment in the most valuable asset they probably own, which is their home.
Absolutely.
And you don't feel as safe investing in your property if you've got those disruptors that are occurring. So we're hopeful that as a result of some of the intentional actions we're going to take this up next year, that people will start to feel safe just investing in their own properties, and making Yakima an even better place to live.
Yeah, it gives them an opportunity to take a breath and loosen that tension that you can feel. I've been in communities like that and neighborhoods like that, so I totally understand and empathize. That we've talked about a lot today, Mr. Harrison. Is there anything else that you want to get out there? I know we have there's a lot of stuff that goes on in our communities. We have many meetings that go on. People can watch that on Ymca. We stream it live. It's also available on Spectrum channel 194. So I want people to, if they're interested in finding out what is going on with the city, visit our website, yakimawa.gov. We're on social media providing all that information, and people can find out what's going on and be involved. And that's part of the process, right?
Yes, absolutely. There is a lot going on in the city that there isn't enough time in a short, 20-minute interview to go through. But I think you're absolutely right. We do a good job of getting information out and posted. We really want to be transparent with our community in terms of what's going on in the city. We didn't get a chance to talk much about economic development, but there was a council meeting here in February where I had a committee of the whole where the staff went through several economic development projects that are ongoing in the city, and I would encourage our residents to access that and take a watch. It's about an hour meeting, but if you really want to be involved or engaged or know what's going on in your community, that's a great way to see that.
And planning commission, we didn't talk about the comp plan or the parks comp plan and all the planning that's going on right now to move our community forward. So people should look at some of those parks and recreation meetings, and they're all available, like I say, on Ymca channel 194. I will put some information up for people to find.
Absolutely right. We've done, this past year, we've done a housing action plan, because part of this, time we were able to kind of repurpose some of the staff to get things done, and the housing action plan got done. That'll help set some guidelines for affordable housing and improving and bringing in more housing into the community. The Parks and Recreation Plan just got finished, and that's coming in front of council for adoption. Planning Commission is looking at making improvements to the comprehensive plan here in a couple of years. So there is a lot of planning going on in the future, as well as, I think, activity today. So
absolutely.
Yakima is a great community. I appreciate the opportunity to serve our residents here in this job, and you probably just tell from my enthusiasm in this interview. We got some good things going on.
Yeah, we could talk all day about the things going on in Yakima. I sincerely appreciate the work that you do, Mr. Harrison. I know that our staff and all of our residents do as well. Thank you for joining me today, and we will talk to you soon. There is a lot of stuff that we can talk about, so I look forward to visiting with you again.
Yeah, you too, Sean. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for joining us today.